The Grand Hall of the Galactic Council stretched upward into darkness, its crystal walls glowing with soft blue light. Thousands of alien species sat in rising tiers, their eyes fixed on the central platform, where the Council's head speaker stood. Today marked the completion of the first Universal Species Classification System, a project that took 50 years to finish. Ambassador Tom Reed sat quietly in the human section, his weathered face calm despite the tension in his shoulders. Around him, representatives from Earth's various nations waited, each trying to hide their nervousness behind diplomatic smiles. The head speaker, a tall being with silvery skin, raised all four of his arms for silence. The results of our comprehensive analysis are complete. His voice boomed through the chamber. Each species has been rated based on physical strength, natural defenses, lifespan, and biological resilience. Holograms appeared in the air, showing rankings from Class A down to Class D, the highest-ranked species puffed up with pride at their positions. The Titans of Rigel, with their diamond-hard skin and thousand-year lifespans, earned their Class A rating. The warrior race of Proxima, with their natural armor and incredible strength, secured Class B. Reed's fingers tightened slightly on his armrest as the rankings continued. Earth's name had not appeared yet. And finally, the head speaker announced, his tone carrying a hint of dismissal, "We come to Class D." The hologram shifted, showing the lowest-ranked species, humans of Earth. A murmur of agreement rippled through the chamber. Many alien representatives nodded, some even chuckling. The head speaker continued, listing humanity's weaknesses one by one. Average lifespan, barely a century. Physical strength, among the lowest of all spacefaring races. Natural defenses, none. Their skin can be pierced by the simplest objects. They require constant protection from their environment. Even their own planet's sun can harm them. Their bones break easily. Their bodies cannot withstand extreme temperatures. They need regular rest cycles and constant water intake. Reed watched as graphs and charts appeared, comparing human capabilities to other species. Each comparison made humanity look more and more pathetic. Yet his face remained pleasant, even somewhat grateful for the attention. In conclusion, the head speaker declared, "While humans have achieved spaceflight and joined the galactic community, they represent the most physically vulnerable intelligent species we have encountered. Their classification as Class D is unanimous." Reed stood up, bowed respectfully, and spoke in a humble voice that carried throughout the chamber. "We thank the Council for this thorough analysis. Humans know their place in the universe, and we are grateful to learn from superior species." His words brought satisfied nods from the assembly. Several Class A representatives gave him what they thought were kindly looks of encouragement. The session ended with humans firmly established as the weakest species in known space. But later that day, in a secure room deep within the Earth Embassy, Reed's humble expression vanished. He sat at a round table with military leaders and top scientists, all of them watching a recording of the classification ceremony. General Lisa Stone switched off the recording. "They bought it completely," she said, a small smile playing on her lips. "Operation Underdog is proceeding exactly as planned." "Their arrogance blinds them," Reed agreed, stretching in his chair. "They see our need for environmental suits as weakness. They mock our shorter lives. Not one of them has realized that these weaknesses drove us to create solutions." "Should we proceed to Phase 2? Asked Dr. Mark Wilson, head of Earth's Advanced Technology Division. Reed nodded. "The Council has done exactly what we hoped, officially labeled us as harmless. Now we can work without their interference or suspicion." He looked around the table. "Ladies and gentlemen, humanity's greatest strength has always been turning our weaknesses into advantages. Let them think us weak. When the time comes, they'll learn that what doesn't kill us only makes us stronger." The room hummed with quiet determination. Humanity had been classified as the weakest species in the universe, but that was exactly what they wanted. After all, No one suspects the weak ones until it's too late. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, in a facility that didn't officially exist, Dr. Jane Miller stood before a massive screen displaying human DNA. The room around her hummed with energy as dozens of scientists worked at their stations. Each of them wore a simple white coat with a small patch showing Earth's new official ranking. Class D. "Show me test subject 47's results," she called out. The screen changed, showing a human body outline with glowing points along the spine and major muscle groups. What the Galactic Council had labeled as weak points were now lighting up like a Christmas tree. Dr. Miller, one of her assistants, Robert, rushed over with a tablet. The enhancement system just completed its 10th successful trial. The subject ran for 72 hours straight without stopping. Jane smiled. What aliens saw as a weakness, humans' need for rest, had led them to create something extraordinary. Their new enhancement suits didn't try to eliminate the need for sleep. Instead, they worked with the human body's natural cycles, allowing the brain to rest one small section at a time while remaining active. "Send in the test results to Section B," she ordered. "And make sure our alien observers only see the failed early trials." The facility had several alien scientists working as advisors, sent by the Council to help the weak humans. They were actually spies, but that worked perfectly into humanity's plans. Every day, they reported back to their superiors about human failures and struggles with basic technology. Jane walked to the testing chamber where John Parker, test subject 47, was removing his enhancement suit. He looked fresh and alert, despite having run for 3 days straight. "How do you feel?" she asked. John grinned. "Like I could run another 3 days." The aliens in Section C were shaking their heads the whole time, probably thinking how pitiful it was that we needed a suit just to keep running. "Little do they know," Jane replied, checking his vital signs. "Perfect, as expected." The truth was beautiful in its simplicity. Humans weren't trying to become stronger like the Class A species. They weren't trying to develop natural armor like the Class B races. Instead, they were embracing their so-called weaknesses and turning them into weapons. Their fragile skin had led them to develop sensing technology far more advanced than any natural armor. Their weak muscles had pushed them to create enhancement systems that worked in harmony with their bodies rather than trying to overpower them. Their pathetic need for environmental protection had resulted in survival suits that could withstand conditions that killed even the toughest species. Jane's computer beeped with an incoming message. It was from Command Center. "Project Prometheus green-lit for Phase 3. Proceed with mass production." She gathered her team, making sure no alien observers were present. "Listen up, everyone. We've got approval to move forward. Start production on the Mark I enhancement systems. Remember, they need to look crude and primitive to outside observers." The team quickly got to work. Through the facility's windows, Jane could see dozens of other testing chambers, each working on different aspects of human weakness. In one, swimmers were testing suits that turned their need for oxygen into an advantage. In another, scientists were perfecting temperature regulation systems that made their environmental vulnerability into a strength. An alarm sounded, indicating that alien observers were approaching for their daily inspection. Quickly, the team switched to their public projects, clumsy attempts at copying alien technology that were designed to fail. As Jane prepared to give the aliens their tour, she thought about how perfect humanity's position was. Labeled as the weakest species in the universe, no one was paying attention to their real advances. No one suspected the humans were preparing not just to survive, but to thrive. She looked at the Class D patch on her coat and smiled. Sometimes, being underestimated was the greatest advantage of all. The universe thought it had humanity figured out, but humans had other plans. Plans that would change everything. The trading station at Beta 9 was always busy, but today something unusual was happening. A group of Class A species gathered around a window, watching human dock workers unload cargo from ships. They had been working for 20 hours straight in the station's high-gravity section. "Impossible," muttered a Titan merchant, his crystal-like skin gleaming under the station's lights. Those Class D weaklings should have collapsed hours ago. Next to him, a Proxima warrior crossed his armored arms. Perhaps they are using stimulants, he suggested. Even then, their fragile bodies should be breaking down. But the humans kept working, seemingly tired but steady. They wore what looked like simple work suits, nothing like the advanced lifting equipment used by other species. If anyone had looked closer, they might have noticed the subtle glow of enhanced fabric, or the quiet hum of systems working in perfect harmony with human biology. The station's overseer, a tall being named First Observer, was troubled. He had filed 3 reports to the Galactic Council about strange occurrences involving humans. All had been dismissed as unimportant. After all, what could the weakest species possibly do that would worry the Council? In his private office, First Observer added another entry to his growing list. Human mining colony on Mars surviving dust storms that killed Class B workers. Human ships operating longer in deep space than should be possible. Human children adapting to alien environments faster than adult Class A species. Human workers showing unusual endurance in extreme conditions. He sent the report, knowing it would probably be ignored like all the others. The Council was too pleased with their classification system to notice its flaws. Meanwhile, at the human embassy, Ambassador Reed received updates from Earth's hidden facilities. Everything was proceeding according to plan. The more humans demonstrated unusual capabilities, the more the other species explained them away as flukes or mistakes. "Sir," his assistant walked in with a data pad, "we have another report of aliens noticing human activities. A group at Beta 9 trading station was watching our dock workers." Reed smiled. "And how did they explain it away this time?" "They think we're using illegal stimulants. Should we correct them?" "No," Reed replied, looking out at the stars. "Let them keep making excuses. It's working in our favor." Across the galaxy, more reports were coming in. A human settlement in the ice rings of Saturn was thriving in temperatures that should have killed them instantly. A human research team survived a radiation burst that even the crystal-skinned Titans avoided. A group of human explorers charted a dangerous nebula that Class A species considered too risky. Each incident was dismissed by the Council. Their logic was simple. Class D species simply couldn't do these things, so there must be some mistake in the reports. At a distant mining outpost, a Class A supervisor watched in confusion as human miners worked deep underground. The environment was hot, toxic, and high pressure. Exactly the kind of place that should be impossible for weak humans to survive. Yet there they were, moving efficiently through tunnels that other species feared to enter. "How?" he asked a human miner during a break. "How do you survive down there?" The human shrugged, wearing what looked like a basic environment suit. "We're used to adapting," she said simply. What she didn't mention was the advanced systems hidden within her seemingly simple gear, or the genetic adaptations that humans had quietly developed. The supervisor filed his own report to the Council, joining hundreds of similar observations piling up in their archives. Each one was tagged as anomaly and filed away, forgotten by the arrogant bureaucrats who were certain of humanity's weakness. But a few beings were starting to wonder. A few were starting to notice that these anomalies were becoming more frequent. A few began to question whether they had made a terrible mistake in underestimating Earth's inhabitants. They were right to worry, but it was already too late. The warning signs were everywhere, but only those who were willing to look past humanity's Class D rating could see them. The universe was about to learn an important lesson. Sometimes the most dangerous thing in existence is a species with something to prove. The Ravagers were feared throughout the galaxy. As a Class A species, they had natural armor stronger than steel, claws that could tear through spaceship hulls, and a reputation for showing no mercy. When their battle fleet appeared near the human colony on Titan, everyone expected a massacre. "This will be easy," growled Fleet Commander Vex of the Ravagers, looking at the small human settlement through his ship's viewport. "These Class D weaklings will surrender at first sight of our ships." But the humans didn't surrender. They didn't even seem afraid. The first sign that something was wrong came when the Ravagers' initial scan showed no panic in the colony. Instead, they detected organized movement and what appeared to be defensive preparations. Impossible, Vex muttered. They should be begging for mercy by now. He grabbed his command microphone. Attention, human colony. You have 1 hour to surrender before we begin our attack. Your weak species cannot hope to. He never finished the sentence. From the surface of Titan, dozens of small ships suddenly launched. They were unlike anything the Ravagers had seen before. Simple, almost crude-looking vessels that seemed too basic to be a threat. They dared to fight. Vex laughed. Launch fighters. Show these Class D fools their place. The battle that followed would change the galaxy forever. The Ravager ships, sleek and powerful, moved to intercept the human vessels. But something strange happened. The human ships, despite their simple appearance, moved with impossible speed and precision. They dodged plasma bolts that should have destroyed them, survived hits that should have vaporized them, and kept fighting long past the point where their weak pilots should have collapsed from strain. Inside one of the human ships, pilot Kate Wilson smiled as her basic flight suit processed information faster than any alien computer. The suit wasn't fighting her body's natural responses to combat. It was working with them, using human adrenaline and instincts to enhance her reactions. Squadron 3, move to Sector 7, she ordered. Let's show them what Class D can do. On the colony's surface, more surprises waited. When Ravager ground forces landed, expecting to find cowering humans, they instead met defenders wearing what looked like primitive battle armor. The Ravagers laughed at first, until those primitive suits proved capable of matching their natural strength. How is this possible? A Ravager soldier screamed as a human in a simple-looking suit lifted him off the ground. You're supposed to be weak. The human defender, John Martins, replied calmly. We got tired of everyone thinking that. His suit's systems worked in perfect harmony with his muscles, turning his supposedly weak human strength into something that could match even Class A species. Hour after hour, the battle raged. The Ravagers, used to quick victories over lesser species, found themselves in a fight they hadn't expected. Their natural advantages meant nothing against humans who had turned their every weakness into a strength. From his command ship, Vex watched in horror as his fleet was systematically taken apart by a species that shouldn't have been able to put up any fight at all. Retreat, he finally ordered. Fall back immediately. As the Ravager ships fled, leaving behind their ground forces to surrender, the human defenders gathered in their colony's main hall. They had won, but more importantly, they had revealed a fraction of their true capabilities. In his office on Earth, Ambassador Reed received the battle report. It's done, he said into his secure communicator. The Ravagers took the bait. They'll report this to the Council. Should we be worried? Asked Dr. Miller's voice from the other end. We showed more than we planned to. Reed smiled. No, we showed exactly what we wanted them to see. They'll still underestimate us. They'll think this was our best effort. They won't realize that those simple suits and ships were just the beginning. As reports of the battle spread across the galaxy, the Council faced a disturbing question. How could the weakest species in the universe defeat one of the strongest? Their carefully constructed classification system had just shown its first crack, and that crack was about to become a chasm. The emergency meeting of the Galactic Council was chaos. Representatives from every species argued loudly, their voices echoing off the crystal walls. At the center of the chamber, images of the Titan colony battle played on endless loop. Order. We will have order. The head speaker's voice boomed across the chamber. We must understand how this happened. How did a Class D species defeat the Ravagers? Dr. Jane Miller stood calmly at the speaker's podium, her simple white coat still showing that Class D patch. Behind her, Ambassador Reed sat with a slight smile, watching the confusion spread through the alien representatives. Honorable Council, Jane began. her voice clear and confident. "You asked to know how humans defeated the Ravagers. The real question is, why did you think we couldn't?" She pressed a button, and the chamber's displays changed. They showed human testing facilities, but not the fake ones they had let aliens observe. These were the real labs, where humanity had been working in secret. "You saw our need for environmental protection as a weakness," she continued, "but it taught us to adapt to any environment. The screens showed humans working in conditions that would kill most Class A species. You mocked our need for rest, but it led us to create systems that work with our natural cycles, not against them." The alien representatives watched in growing horror as Jane revealed one secret after another. The simple suits that had defeated the Ravagers were just the beginning. Humans had developed technologies that worked perfectly for their weak bodies, but were useless to physically stronger species. But this is impossible," stuttered a Titan representative. "Your species can barely survive on your own planet. We've seen your struggles." Reed stepped forward. "You saw what we wanted you to see. Every failure, every struggle, every moment of weakness. It was all carefully planned. We needed you to underestimate us." The screens now showed human colonies thriving in the most hostile environments. Places where even Class A species feared to go had become home to the weak humans. "Your classification system had one major flaw," Jane explained. "You measured strength by what natural abilities a species is born with. We measure it by what we can become." A Proxima warrior stood up. "The suits we saw in battle, they were primitive, basic technology." Jane smiled. "Those were our first-generation suits, deliberately designed to look simple. Would you like to see what our current technology can do?" She pressed another button, and her simple white coat transformed. Nanomaterials shifted and changed, revealing an advanced suit that had been disguised as ordinary clothing. Around the chamber, other humans did the same, their seemingly basic outfits becoming something far more impressive. The council erupted again, this time in panic. Some representatives called for immediate action against Earth. Others demanded to know how they had been fooled for so long. "We propose a new way of looking at species classification," Reed announced over the chaos. "One that measures potential, not just natural ability. One that understands that sometimes the greatest strength comes from overcoming weakness." Jane stepped forward again. "Humanity never wanted to be the strongest species. We don't want to rule or dominate. We simply refuse to accept the limitations others placed on us." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity hadn't just fooled them. They had completely changed the game. Their weakness had become their greatest strength. "The choice is yours," Reed concluded. "Continue to cling to your old system, or work with us to create something better. Either way, humanity will continue to advance, to adapt, to overcome." As the council representatives looked at each other in confusion and fear, a single thought echoed through the chamber. They had classified humans as the weakest species in the universe, but in doing so, they had given humanity the perfect cover to become one of the strongest. The age of underestimating humanity was over. The question now was, what would the galaxy look like when everyone realized what humans were truly capable of? 1 month after the revelation at the council chamber, the Great Hall looked very different. The rising tiers were now filled with representatives from all classes, not just the superior species. At the center stage, Ambassador Reeves stood with Dr. Miller, preparing to present humanity's new classification system. "Look at them all," Reed whispered to Jane. "A month ago, half of these species wouldn't even have been allowed in this chamber." The formerly lesser species sat proudly among their Class A counterparts. Many wore human-designed adaptive technology, proving that strength wasn't just about natural abilities. Reed stepped forward to address the gathering. "For too long, we measured worth by what we were born with, not what we could achieve. Today, that changes." The massive screens lit up, showing the new ranking system. Gone were the simple A through D classifications. In their place was something more complex, more fair. First, Reed announced, "We look at adaptive capability. How well can a species overcome its limitations?" The moisture farmers of Delta 9, once ranked Class C due to their primitive biology, survived on a desert world by learning to pull water from stone. That's not weakness. That's incredible strength. Many of the Delta 9 representatives nodded, their eyes bright with pride. They had already begun working with human scientists to improve their water-gathering technology. Dr. Miller took over the presentation. Second, we measure innovation under pressure. The crystal beings of Proxima's moons were ranked Class B because they move slowly, but they developed the most advanced communication network in the galaxy precisely because they needed to overcome their speed limitation. The crystal beings glowed brightly, their former shame at their slowness replaced with understanding of their unique strengths. Third, Reed continued, we look at cooperative potential. The hive mind of Sector 7, once dismissed as Class C, has already helped us improve our neural interface technology beyond what we thought possible. Throughout the chamber, species that had once been looked down upon sat straighter, their unique abilities finally being recognized as valuable. But not everyone was happy. A group of former Class A species gathered in one section, their anger visible. "This is outrageous," a Titan representative shouted. "You can't simply change a system that has worked for centuries." Reed smiled calmly. Worked for whom? For the naturally strong, while others suffered and struggled. No, that ends today. Dr. Miller pressed a button, and the chamber's environmental controls shifted. Suddenly, the atmosphere became thinner, the gravity increased. The formerly superior species struggled while the weaker ones adapted quickly, using their hard-learned survival skills. "You see," she said, restoring normal conditions. "True strength isn't about being naturally suited to one environment. It's about adapting to any environment." The chamber erupted in discussion, but this time it was different. Species that had never spoken to each other were sharing ideas. Former Class D beings were teaching Class A species about survival techniques. The barriers were breaking down. "We propose an alliance," Reed announced over the noise. "Not based on natural strength or ancient rankings, but on what we can learn from each other. Every species has something to teach, something to share." The voting was quick and decisive. The old system was officially dead. In its place, a new organization was born, the Adaptive Species Alliance. As the session ended, Reed watched various species mingling, sharing technologies and ideas. The moisture farmers were showing their water-finding techniques to amazed Titans. The crystal beings were discussing communication improvements with the hive mind. "We did it," Jane said quietly. "We changed everything." Reed nodded. "And we did it not by becoming the strongest, but by showing everyone their own strength." The universe had called humans the weakest species. Instead, humans had shown that true strength wasn't about natural advantages. It was about the will to overcome, adapt, and grow. In doing so, they hadn't just lifted themselves up. They had lifted up every species that had ever been underestimated. The age of natural supremacy was over. The age of adaptation had begun. 5 years after the formation of the Adaptive Species Alliance, the galaxy had changed beyond recognition. The Grand Hall of what was once the Galactic Council now served as the Alliance's main meeting center. Today, it was packed for a historic moment. A new species had achieved spaceflight. Dr. Jane Miller, now serving as the Alliance's Chief of Scientific Development, stood with Ambassador Reed as they watched the newcomers enter. The alien species moved on 6 legs, their bodies covered in soft fur that offered little protection. Under the old system, they would have been immediately classified as Class D. "Welcome to the galactic community," Reed announced warmly. "I am Thomas Reed of Earth." The alien representative moved forward, clearly nervous. We heard stories," it said through a translator, "about how the strong species treat the weak. We almost didn't come." Jane stepped forward, smiling. "Those stories are from the old days. Things are different now." She pressed a button on her wrist, and the chamber's displays came to life, showing the achievements of the past 5 years. The moisture farmers had developed technology that could turn dead worlds into gardens. The crystal beings had created a galaxy-wide communication network that worked at unprecedented speeds. Former Class C species had become leaders in their fields. Once, Reed explained to the newcomers, "We too were called weak. But look around you now." The chamber was filled with representatives using technology that worked with their natural abilities, not against them. Species once dismissed as primitive now led the most advanced research projects in history. The former Class A species had learned to value adaptation over raw strength. "We don't measure strength by what you're born with," Jane explained. "We measure it by what you can achieve, what you can learn, how you can grow." The new species looked around in wonder. Their own planet had harsh seasons, forcing them to adapt constantly to survive. Under the old system, this would have been seen as a weakness. Now, it was recognized as valuable experience. "We would be honored to learn from you," Reed said. "Tell us how you survived your world's challenges. Share your adaptations, your solutions. In return, we'll share everything we've learned." From her position near the stage, Jane watched the faces of various species in the crowd. The Titans, once proudly isolated in their physical superiority, now worked closely with species they once despised. The Ravagers, humbled by their defeat years ago, had become eager students of adaptive technology. The newest species was quickly surrounded by friendly representatives, each sharing stories of their own journeys from weakness to strength. Their fear melted away, replaced by excitement and hope. "Ready for the ceremony?" Reed asked Jane quietly. She nodded, and together they moved to the center stage. It was time for the official welcome. 5 years ago, Reed announced to the gathered species, "We promised a new way forward. Today, we see the results. Our newest friends bring new perspectives, new solutions, new strength to our alliance." The chamber erupted in cheers, something that would have been unthinkable in the old days. The new species stood straighter, pride replacing their earlier nervousness. "The universe once called humans the weakest species," Jane added. "Now we know better. There are no weak species. There are only different kinds of strength." As the ceremony concluded, Jane looked at her old Class D badge, kept as a reminder of how far they'd come. She handed it to the new species representative. "Keep this," she said. "Remember that the day they called you weak was the day you started proving just how strong you could be." The galaxy had learned its lesson. True strength wasn't about natural advantages or physical power. It was about adaptation, innovation, and the willingness to learn from each other. Humanity had started this revolution not by becoming the strongest, but by showing that every species had strength of its own. The universe had called humans the weakest species. Humans had responded by making everyone stronger.